You can't walk anywhere in my city of New York without seeing scaffolding stuck to the sides of buildings, like barnacles on a ship's hull. Every New Yorker has had to cross the street to avoid those ugly blue poles holding up wooden planks, or descend into damp makeshift tunnels under a work site, only to be squirted out into another time and dimension like a wormhole in deep space. I love scaffolding, and I'm fascinated by the notion of building something in order to build something. When I was a kid, my dream was to count every grain of sand on Earth, as if an inventory of every particle would uncover some greater hidden truth. I even went as far as to steal my brother's bug collecting kit with tweezers and a cup and magnifying glass. And although only a thimbleful of sand was actually counted, something far more miraculous happened. I began to think like an artist. Artists are people who have the right dreams at the wrong time. They set out impossible tasks for themselves only to fall short. It wasn't the number of grains of sand that were counted, but the guileless notion that it was worth trying that really meant something to me. Sometimes the truth isn't discovered, it is manufactured. I orchestrated a consummate failure and in the process discovered lucidity. Art fails us. It is lifeless and incomplete. We project our vitality into it, and in return, it compensates us for life's impermanence. By magnifying its limitations, art shows us that perfection is unattainable. It's the longing that counts. All artists live in the gap between what they see in their mind and what they actually produce. My paintings never live up to what I see in my mind, but somehow in that failure, something else happens. Something else becomes clear to me, and then I move forward with that. Albert Einstein said, insanity is repeating the same behavior, expecting different results. Art is a collision between insanity and skill. Too much skill, too much technique comes across as dry and pretentious, while too much crazy without the chops to deliver it in tenable form comes across as just crazy. There has to be a balance between the two. Shout your nutty ideas to the world. We need more stupid. Artists are not supposed to play it safe. Society doesn't depend on us for sound, responsible decision making. Insulate yourself from sensible people. And if you're lucky, that insulation will last a lifetime and you'll produce meaningful work. But first, you have to build something in order to build something. The single most important thing a painter can have is a locked door. Creativity begins in solitude. Locking your door achieves two things at the same time. It tells the world to stay out, that you mean business, and it also confines you to a place where self-awareness, the enemy of art, can be rinsed away. It's much easier to fall in love with the sound of your own voice when no one else is listening. The worst thing a painter can do is edit as they work. Spill everything out behind your locked door and then fix it later. There are no talent scouts in painting. You are utterly and completely on your own. And I can assure you, no one cares what you do. So you might as well lock your door and get started. The reason that I am here all the time working behind my locked door is so that my muse will know how to find me. Mine is a middle-aged man named Homaya. He wears a brown trench coat and he has long sideburns. Homaya has been my muse ever since I was a child. I'm not kidding. And the reason that I work regular hours all the time is so that Homaya will know how to find me. I get in here, I begin work, and sure enough, he appears. And I know that when Homaya is with me, I have access to my clear-seeing place. Every painter needs their own clear-seeing place. A career is made of many moving parts, but there has to be one cable that connects your softest tissue directly into that clear-seeing place. Art is empathy. Art brings us back into ourselves by first making us unrecognizable to ourselves. We are seeing the world through someone else's eyes. And I say this all the time. Art will save the world because it teaches us empathy. And I believe that painting is the most empathetic of all art forms because the viewer stands in the exact spot that the painter did as they applied each greasy shingle of color. The painter and the artist are standing in the exact same position. The painting is the evidence of its own creation. Intimacy is not represented, it's automatically built in, and we get to experience it in the flesh, in the immediate moment. Painting, in my opinion, is kind of like a hooker. It does its work up close and personal, one customer at a time. I'm going to mix some titanium white, which is opaque and the brightest white, with some primary magenta, which is transparent, and raw umber, which is semi-transparent. The magenta is a modern color, meaning it's made in factories. The umber is a mineral color, meaning it comes from the earth. And because the modern color has a high tinting strength, when I add white to it, it becomes very intense in its pinkness. Then I counter that down with the earthiness of the brown. Reminding me of some of the mud I used to be enamored with in South Carolina where I grew up, especially in the late evening. Now I'm going to add some ultramarine blue, which is transparent warm blue, to the mixture, giving it a sense of spaciousness and air. Cézanne often referred to blue as the color of air, giving his paintings what he called a harmony parallel to nature, giving them a sense of oxygen and atmosphere. I noticed it snowed this morning in New York City, and on the ground, kind of a light dusting of fresh snow. And that's the quality I'm looking for when I add this blue and white combination, kind of a dusty quality to pre-mixed colors. And indeed, I say all the time that humidity is what made me a painter. The South is so hot and humid that water literally hangs in the air. And when I add blue to colors, it's an attempt to sort of bring a sense of wetness and that kind of languid Carolina air that stuck to my eyelids and hung like curtains at dusk. We had no curfews when I was a kid. We would just wander creeks and lakes and rivers, and my mom would blow this big blue plastic horn down the street, and that meant it was time for dinner. For this video, I pulled the camera back a little bit. Sometimes I don't wear pants in these videos. But I want to talk about the role that our physical bodies play in the paintings that we make. Do we yield to our size or do we deny it? For instance, I've met both Frank Stella and Helen Frankenthaler, both of whom seem too small and slight to produce the massive works that they do. I've also met Richard Diebenkorn and Joan Mitchell, and they had more robust carriages, larger, that seemed to match the muscularity of their paintings. I'm huge. I'm 6'3", 245 pounds, which qualifies me as a big dumb klutz. And although the way that I move through the world lacks nimbleness and grace, I feel like my physical carriage matches the paintings that I make. And being tall has other advantages. People can spot me in long lines. I tower above umbrellas on rainy days, and in subways I can stand up where the fresh air is, where other people have to stare at armpits and crotches. It also has disadvantages. Theater seats are torture devices. Coach class on airplanes is painful, and even getting in and out of New York taxi cabs, I have to get out of a cab kind of doggy style because it's hard for me to swing my legs over. There's not enough room back there. And Indeed, the reason that I became a painter in the first place is largely due to my size. When I was a kid, I wanted to be a magician, but my hands grew too big to do convincing sleight of hand. My mother always said that people notice your hands, and I keep a bottle of hand lotion and a nail file on my desk in her memory, although I never use it. I have horrific hands. I'm a nail biter. I have big, fat Shrek fingers. But these are perfect for wielding stubby brushes and fistfuls of oil paint. So essentially, I'm a painter because I'm a failed magician.